When two human beings meet, something invisible happens between them, something that cannot be measured by intellect nor captured by words. It is as if two unseen worlds begin to touch, two invisible spheres of being interpenetrating one another. Beneath the exchange of words and gestures, a subtle current flows. This current belongs not to the ego, but to the soul, that ancient and eternal reality which underlies all that we call human. Every true encounter carries within it a spark of mystery, for no one ever meets another person entirely. We meet only the portion of their being that can enter our field of consciousness, and yet behind that visible portion lies an immeasurable depth, an entire cosmos. The same is true of ourselves. We too are vast inner landscapes, barely known to our own minds, filled with regions of light and darkness, angels and demons, the divine and the tragic. Thus, every meeting between two souls is not merely a social event, but a spiritual one. It is the meeting of two unconscious worlds, two histories of eternity, momentarily crossing paths in time. I have often said that every human relationship is a psychological process, an alchemical vessel in which transformation occurs. But when two evolved souls meet two individuals who have faced their own darkness, who have descended into the underworld of the psyche and returned bearing the light of self-knowledge, something altogether different takes place. The air thickens. Words become unnecessary. Each recognizes in the other the mirror of the self, the spark of the divine that speaks through the human form. It is a rare event, for such meetings cannot be forced or manufactured. They happen as if ordained by a deeper intelligence, the self guiding the paths of individuals until the moment of resonance occurs. When it does, it is as though two flames recognize one another and burn with a single brightness. Yet this brightness does not consume, it illuminates. It reveals what has long been hidden within each participant. For the evolved soul, the other is not an object of desire, nor a possession, nor a role to be filled, but a symbol, a living symbol of the soul's own process of becoming. You see, the psyche has a strange way of mirroring itself through the people it meets. What we love in another is what we have begun to awaken within ourselves. And what disturbs us in another is what we have not yet accepted in our own shadow. The unconscious orchestrates these encounters with exquisite precision, ensuring that every relationship, whether of love or conflict, serves the deeper purpose of wholeness. But when two individuals have each done their inner work, when they have met their shadow, integrated their opposites, and begun to live from the center of the self, their meeting transcends the ordinary dynamics of projection. It is no longer a collision of unconscious needs, but a communion of consciousness. Each sees the other not as a screen for fantasy, but as a being in whom the divine is also seeking expression. In this sacred recognition, love becomes not an emotion, but a state of being, an awareness of unity that flows through two vessels, yet belongs to neither. This kind of meeting is exceedingly rare, for most relationships are still governed by projection. The average person does not see the other as they truly are, but as an image shaped by the needs of their unconscious. A man meets a woman and sees in her the reflection of his anima, his inner feminine, and she in turn perceives in him the image of her animus, her inner masculine. Thus they fall in love not with one another, but with the hidden parts of themselves that they have yet to claim. It is a sacred illusion, one that leads them, if they have the courage, into the confrontation with their own depths. But when that work is done, when the veil of projection has fallen, something extraordinary remains. It is not infatuation, nor dependence, nor desire for possession. It is the quiet joy of recognition, soul seeing soul, consciousness meeting consciousness. It is not passion that burns out, but light that deepens. This is what it means when two evolved souls meet. Such a meeting does not promise comfort. On the contrary, it may awaken profound disturbance, for the presence of another conscious being acts as a mirror to one's innermost truth. There is nowhere left to hide. The games of the ego, the masks of the persona, lose their power. In the gaze of the other, one feels the call of the self, that divine center which seeks nothing less than wholeness. When you meet such a soul, you may feel a strange recognition as though you have met before. Though not in time, it is a remembrance of the eternal self recognizing itself in another form. The encounter may stir deep emotion, joy mingled with fear, for you are not simply meeting another person, you are meeting a reflection of your own completion. And yet, this kind of connection cannot be owned or maintained by will. It belongs to the realm of grace. You cannot force such a meeting to continue, nor can you recreate it through longing. It comes when it must and departs when its work is done. For these encounters serve a purpose not of possession, but of awakening. The souls meet, ignite, and each is changed, often forever. When two evolved souls meet, they may find themselves communicating without words through silence, through presence, through shared stillness. There is a current of understanding that flows beneath speech, as if two rivers merge beneath the surface. Each perceives the other's being not through analysis, but through resonance. It is the same mysterious knowing that exists between the conscious and the unconscious, an intuition born not of intellect, but of essence. In such a union, love is no longer a seeking, but a recognition. It does not grasp or cling, for it knows that what it beholds is eternal and cannot be lost. The ego may tremble in the face of such vastness, for the meeting exposes the illusion of separateness upon which the ego depends. And yet, this trembling is the beginning of liberation. For love between two evolved souls is not a fusion that erases individuality, but a dance that celebrates it. Remains distinct, yet connected, like two flames burning side by side. They do not diminish one another's light. Rather, they intensify it. They understand that the purpose of union is not to complete, but to awaken, not to bind, but to reveal. In that revelation lies the deepest paradox of love, that we are most united when we are most ourselves. The evolved soul does not seek to merge into the other, but to stand in full awareness, allowing love to flow freely between two centers of consciousness. Such love is not a contract. nor a drama, nor a battle of wills. It is a state of mutual reverence, born of the recognition that each person is an expression of the same divine mystery. You see, the psyche is always striving for wholeness, and in the meeting of two evolved beings, the self perceives itself reflected. It is a reunion, not of personalities, but of essences. What occurs between them transcends the boundaries of time, for the self lives outside of time. Sometimes such meetings happen only once, and yet their impact echoes across years, perhaps across lifetimes. For once you have looked into the eyes of another soul and seen your own depth mirrored there, you can never forget. Something in you has awakened to eternity. And yet, such connections are not meant to be perfect in the worldly sense. They may come with challenges, with separations, even with pain, for the meeting of two great lights can cast deep shadows. Each soul becomes a catalyst for the other's continued evolution. The love between them reveals not only harmony, but also the remaining fragments of the unconscious that still long for integration. The evolved soul does not flee from this, for it knows that every shadow revealed by love is a door into greater consciousness. Thus, even in moments of conflict or silence, the bond endures on another plane, not in form. But in essence, for the connection between two conscious beings is not sustained by proximity or possession, but by awareness. They carry one another within as symbols of the eternal process of individuation. Each becomes for the other a living reminder of the self, the inner wholeness that transcends all opposites. When two evolved souls meet, the world around them subtly changes. There is a stillness, a feeling as though time itself bends to witness the event. In their presence, others may sense something inexplicable, a vibration, a peace, a light that seems to emanate not from personality but from the depths of being. It is as though the archetype of the self shines through them both, reminding those who witness it of what is possible in human life. Such is the mystery of the meeting between two souls who have become conscious of themselves. It is not a romantic ideal, nor a spiritual fantasy, but a lived reality that points towards the ultimate purpose of existence, the realization that love, in its truest form, is the movement of consciousness toward unity. And now, having glimpsed this mystery, we must ask, what becomes of the individual after such an encounter? What changes within the soul when it has known another at that depth? Does one return unchanged to ordinary life? Or is something irreversibly transformed? Let us look more deeply into that question, for it touches the very essence of what it means to be human and divine. When one has met another soul at that depth, when two beings have looked into the mirror of each other's essence, something in the structure of the psyche shifts forever. It is as if a new center of gravity is born within the being, a silent remembrance of wholeness that can no longer be ignored. You may go on with the ordinary duties of life, working, speaking, laughing, yet a quiet pulse of eternity continues to beat beneath the surface. The world seems both the same and entirely different. You have glimpsed the archetype of union, And from that moment on, life itself becomes a sacred text. You can no longer read as before. Most people do not realize that every relationship is an act of the psyche, seeking balance. The unconscious reaches out through our affections, our conflicts, our longing, trying to restore what has been lost or divided within. Thus, every person we love becomes a mirror, every separation a lesson, every reunion a symbol. But when two evolved souls meet those who have already encountered and embraced their own shadows, the relationship no longer serves to expose unconscious wounds alone. It becomes an expression of something much greater. The meeting becomes a vessel through which the divine experiences itself. You might say that such a union belongs to the realm of archetypes, that the two people have become carriers of an eternal image, the sacred marriage, the conjunctio of the alchemist. This symbol has lived in our collective unconscious for millennia, representing the union of opposites, the sun and the moon, spirit and matter, masculine and feminine, consciousness and unconsciousness. When this archetype manifests in human life, it is both wondrous and perilous. For the same fire that unites can also consume if the ego clings to what was meant to flow freely. The danger lies in trying to possess what is meant to be symbolic. When two souls meet on this level, the experience is not merely personal, it is transpersonal. The energy that passes between them does not belong to their individual egos, but to something larger. The movement of the self through the world, to mistake this for an ordinary attachment, is to fall back into illusion. The ego says, this person belongs to me. But the soul whispers, this moment belongs to eternity. To live such love consciously requires a rare humility. It demands that we surrender our wish to control the form of the relationship and instead listen to its inner necessity. Sometimes that necessity asks for closeness. At other times, it asks for distance, for solitude, for even love in its highest form must breathe. It must move in rhythm with the mystery that gave it birth. When such a union becomes too identified with the personal, it begins to decay. The divine light collapses into human conflict, jealousy, and fear of loss. The archetypal energy that once elevated the connection becomes distorted by possessiveness and desire. It is then that love turns into suffering. Not because love itself is flawed, but because the ego cannot endure the vastness of what it has touched. The ego fears annihilation in the face of the self. And so it grasps, it clings, it resists, forgetting that what it seeks to hold can only be known through surrender. True love, you see, is not a bond of dependency, but a resonance of freedom. It does not seek to own, but to reflect. To love consciously is to allow the other to be as they are, to stand before their mystery without the need to define it. To hold their presence lightly as one holds a flame cupped in the hand, knowing that even a breath too strong will extinguish it. When two evolved souls meet, they do not demand perfection from one another. They understand that the human being remains a vessel of contradictions, light and darkness, wisdom and folly, sacredness and sin. They do not laugh, in spite of these contradictions. but through them, for they know that the shadow is not the enemy of love, it is its foundation. Only through the acceptance of darkness can light be born within the human heart. There is a deep spiritual loneliness in those who have traveled far along the path of individuation. They have withdrawn many of the projections that once bound them to others. They have faced their inner demons, broken the idols of false identity, and stood alone before the mystery of the self. Yet, in that solitude, the soul begins to long again, not for escape, but for resonance, for even consciousness in its highest form seeks reflection. Just as light becomes visible only when it meets an object, the self becomes knowable only when it is mirrored in another awakened being. This is why the meeting of two evolved souls feels like destiny. It is the moment when consciousness recognizes itself through the eyes of another. Each becomes the other's witness, the sacred mirror that confirms the reality of the inner world. In such moments, love ceases to be a feeling and becomes a revelation. It reveals that what we call I and you are but two expressions of the same eternal consciousness. Yet we must remember, no relationship, however divine, can substitute for the individual's own union with the self. The meeting with another soul is not the completion of our journey, but its reflection. It shows us what is possible, but we must still integrate the experience within our own being. To depend on the other for wholeness is to lose the very consciousness that made the meeting sacred in the first place. There are those who, after such an encounter, find themselves plunged into darkness. The light of the meeting exposes the remaining shadows within the psyche, and what once felt like divine ecstasy may turn to emptiness or despair. This too is part of the process. The psyche must adjust to the expansion of consciousness that such love brings. The encounter opens the gates of the unconscious, and all that was hidden rushes to the surface. Old wounds, forgotten griefs, the unlived parts of life. The evolved soul does not run from this. They allow the descent, knowing that it is through darkness that new light is born. For in the end, every meeting, even the most transcendent, must lead us back to ourselves. The other serves as a revelation, but the transformation must occur within. The goal of all relationships is not union with another person, but union within oneself. And it is precisely through the mirror of relationship that we come to see what is still divided inside us. The world today speaks often of twin flames or soulmates, as if these were ideals of romantic destiny. But what the soul truly seeks is not a partner to fill its emptiness, but a companion in awakening, someone who, through their being, evokes our own depth, our own courage to live authentically. The greatest relationships are not those in which two people lose themselves in one another, but those in which each helps the other find themselves more fully. The meeting of two evolved souls is not the end of longing, but the transformation of it. Desire becomes devotion not to the other person, but to the divine within both. The energy that once sought satisfaction through possession now becomes an offering, a prayer, a recognition that love is the path by which consciousness knows itself. Such love is not without pain, for the more deeply we love, the more vulnerable we become. But the evolved soul does not flee this vulnerability. They embrace it as the price of being alive. To love is to open oneself to death, the death of the ego, the death of certainty, the death of control. Yet beyond that, death lies resurrection, the birth of a love that no longer depends on form, time, or outcome. When two evolved souls part, whether by distance, circumstance, or death, the connection does not end. It continues inwardly as a living current in the unconscious. They may no longer share words or touch, but they are bound by the invisible thread of the self which transcends space and time. The memory of that meeting becomes a compass, guiding each toward greater wholeness. If you have ever known such a meeting, even once you carry within you a responsibility to live according to what you have seen. For the light revealed through another becomes a flame that you must tend within yourself. To betray that light through denial or cynicism is to betray your own soul. To honor it is to become, in turn, a mirror for others. The purpose of every sacred encounter is transmission, not of knowledge, but of being. When consciousness recognizes itself in another, it awakens the same recognition in all who come near. This is why the presence of an awakened person can transform a room without a single word spoken. The light of one soul silently calls to the light in others. And thus, through countless encounters, the self continues its eternal work of awakening through humanity. It is not the grand gestures that matter, nor the permanence of form, but the depths of awareness brought to the meeting. For love is not measured in time, but in consciousness, two souls may share a lifetime and never truly meet. Two may meet for an instant and change each other forever. And so the question remains, what happens to the world, to humanity, when more and more souls awaken to this kind of love? What changes when human relationships are no longer governed by projection and possession, but by consciousness and freedom? Let us move now toward that horizon where the individual awakening of the soul begins to reshape the destiny of the collective. For the meeting of two evolved souls is but a spark of a far greater transformation awaiting humankind. When two evolved souls meet, something happens that defies the normal categories of human experience. It is not merely that two minds find affinity or two hearts find resonance, but that the archetypal forces of life themselves awaken as if called forth by recognition. The air between them becomes charged, almost sacred, for what they share is not bound by personality or circumstance. It is the meeting of two presences that have both descended into their depths and returned bearing the same mysterious light. In such an encounter, the individual no longer relates from the surface of the ego, but from the living core of the self. It is as if the divine spark within one bows before the divine spark within the other. And for a brief moment, the illusion of separation dissolves into an awareness of unity that is beyond words. But one must not imagine that such meetings are always tranquil or easy. When two evolved souls meet, the light that shines between them can also reveal the last hidden shadows. Every unhealed fragment within each is drawn out into the open, not as punishment, But as necessity, the relationship becomes a mirror not only of beauty but of truth, a truth that purifies through confrontation. The evolved soul does not flee from this exposure, it welcomes it. For to love from the level of the self is to love with the full recognition of one's own incompleteness. One no longer seeks perfection in the other, but the sacred exchange in which both are humbled by the vastness of what they reflect. Such meetings do not occur by chance. They come when the psyche has ripened through solitude, through suffering, through the long night of the soul in which all false attachments have fallen away. It is only when one has endured the loneliness of becoming whole that one is capable of meeting another without demand, without need, without the unconscious hunger to possess. Most human relationships are entanglements of shadow and projection, where the other becomes a screen upon which we cast the unseen contents of our own psyche. But the evolved soul has withdrawn its projections. It no longer mistakes the other for a missing piece of itself. Therefore, when it loves with freedom. Its affection is not born of lack, but of overflowing being. This is why such connections are exceedingly rare. They are not created by effort or desire. They arise from the mysterious synchrony of the unconscious, the way two destinies converge at the precise moment when both are ready. It is as if the self of one recognizes the self of the other. And together they participate in a larger pattern of wholeness that transcends both individuals. The meeting becomes an alchemical vessel in which transformation continues, but now not alone, but in communion. It is a sacred union, though not necessarily romantic or bound by form. It can occur between lovers, friends, teachers, or even between a human being and the unseen presence of life itself. When this happens, the world itself seems to shift. One begins to perceive through the lens of the eternal rather than the temporal. The small dramas of the ego lose their grip, and a new kind of seeing emerges, one that perceives meaning where before there was only coincidence. Such vision is the mark of the individuated soul. It has discovered that life is not a series of accidents, but a living myth in which every encounter, every joy, every sorrow has been guiding it toward integration. And when two such souls meet, their union reveals the myth itself. It becomes a symbol of the reconciliation of opposites. The eternal marriage between spirit and matter, heaven and earth, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. This symbolic marriage is not a sentimental metaphor, but the foundation of creation itself. Within each of us lives both the animus and the anima, the eternal masculine and the eternal feminine, whose reconciliation births the self. When we meet another evolved being, these inner counterparts awaken. The man feels the living presence of the feminine principle within himself mirrored through the woman, and the woman feels the depths of the masculine within her reflected through the man. But the true mystery is that these inner forces are not separate. They are expressions of the same divine unity, two faces of one reality. Thus, the meeting of two evolved souls is not a union of two halves, but the recognition of two wholes who see in each other the reflection of the same infinite source. And yet, even in this sacred recognition, there is danger. The power of such encounters can intoxicate. It can make one believe that the other is the source of the revelation, when in truth the light comes from within. The evolved soul must guard against the temptation to idolize the other, for that would be to lose oneself again in projection. The task is to honor the meeting as a symbol, not as possession, to love without clinging, to give without expectation, to remain true to one's own center, even in the ecstasy of union. That is the mature form of love that arises only from the individuated heart. When such love manifests, it radiates outward beyond the personal. It becomes a force of healing for the world. For every genuine meeting of souls awakens something in the collective unconscious, a vibration of truth that touches others invisibly. The world, though seemingly asleep, is subtly changed by each act of conscious love. In this sense, the meeting of two evolved beings is not for them alone. It serves a larger mystery. They become instruments through which the self expresses its eternal creativity. Their connection is both deeply human and profoundly divine, grounded in the reality of daily life, yet shimmering with the light of eternity. And still, this union is not the end of the journey. Every meeting, no matter how luminous, carries within it the seed of separation. For life moves in rhythms, union and withdrawal, fullness and emptiness, light and shadow. Even the most sacred bond must submit to this eternal law. To cling to the moment of revelation is to deny the flow of transformation. The evolved soul understands this and allows love to breathe, to die and be reborn, to move freely between the poles of togetherness and solitude. Only in this freedom does love remain alive. Perhaps this is the greatest paradox of spiritual intimacy, that it requires both union and aloneness. The soul cannot merge completely without losing its individuality, nor can it remain isolated without withering. The dance of evolved souls is therefore one of balance, of coming together to mirror the divine and parting to deepen one's individuality. Each encounter enriches the other, not by absorption, but by reflection. It is a rhythm as old as creation itself, echoing the cosmic pulse of contraction and expansion, the heartbeat of existence. And so, when two evolved souls meet, for the world witnesses a quiet miracle. The revelation that love and consciousness are not separate forces, but two aspects of the same unfolding mystery. Through them, life remembers itself. Through their meeting, the universe catches a glimpse of its own reflection and recognizes that beneath all diversity, there is but one essence endlessly seeking to know itself through the eyes of another.